Well, I went through the 2024 D&D Players Handbook, page by page, and documented the character-focused artwork to see if it could provide just a little bit of insight into who Wizards of the Coast thinks that their target market is. The results were, even to these wide-open eyes, a tad shocking. I'll get to those in just a few moments. But to understand the current environment, let me lay the groundwork just a little, if you will.
All right, so what is this here? Well, this is Diversity in Dragons, as you can see over his left shoulder. And he is claiming that he went through the most recent Player's Handbook for Dungeons & Dragons and counted all the imagery, and it came out that there are only about 20% of the images in the book that feature characters, feature people, have white men in them. And the other 80% is non-white individual, a BIPOC, a woman, because mostly men play D&D. And he's calling this a 5-to-1 ratio. It's not a 5-to-1 ratio. It would be a 4-to-1 ratio. Can't you do math? So this has been promulgated by John De La Rose on his channel. He says this every time he does a D&D video, practically.
The 2024 Players Handbook is filled with imagery of BIPOC, that's Black, Indigenous, people of color, and female characters at a margin of more than 5-to-1 compared to white male characters. The 2024 Players Handbook is also filled with imagery of BIPOC, women. It's like a 5-to-1 margin of that versus white males in everything in the book. The Player Handbook is also filled with imagery of like BIPOC and female characters on a margin of more than 5-to-1 for white male characters. The Players Handbook is filled with images of BIPOC and female characters. Diversity in Dragons, which is a great YouTube channel, actually did a count of all the pictures in there. It's like a 5-to-1 margin of these diversity characters.
And it's just not true. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that Dungeons & Dragons, the new version of Dungeons & Dragons, does not lean heavily towards BIPOC, women, disabled, etc. I'm not saying it doesn't do that, because it certainly does. We see more of it in this edition than we did in other editions, but it's not a 5-to-1 ratio. It's just not. It's not a 1/5 ratio. And what we're going to do is we're going to count all these images, but I want to take a look at Diversity in Dragons video a little bit more to kind of get a feel for what he's saying here and what's going on in the industry. Now, before we go any further, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Make sure that you're still subscribed. YouTube does unsubscribe people. You can find me on Rumble and on Twitter. Let's get into this video here a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and count. I'm going to pull up the Player's Handbook, and we'll count the images, and we'll keep a tally of how many feature white men and how many feature non-white, non-male humans, and then we can also keep a count of how many feature non-humans altogether, because inexplicably, that seems to be a big deal to this guy. So he just went through a comparison of, you told your friend all about the NBA, and you showed him pictures of white people playing the game, and it was only pictures of white people, and your favorite players were all white people, and then he goes to a game and it's mostly black people. Wouldn't he be confused? It's just a stupid comparison, because it doesn't really represent what's going on in Dungeons & Dragons, so it's kind of a piss poor comparison. He is going to talk a lot about kind of what's going on in the industry, and he does have some good things to say, so let's take a look at that.
For the last several years, Wizards of the Coast and the Seattle RPG companies have foisted a lie upon the public. They want the world to believe that white people are no longer the majority of players in this hobby.
This is not the face of the hobby anymore. And I think there's been mistakes made in years past where people assumed that D&D players were all, white dudes in a basement, which has been a faulty assumption for a lot of years and gets more and more false every day.
They say it as if...
So if you weren't looking at the screen there, he had Justin Tondo talking while he was showing apparently video of, Gen Con, one of the cons, whatever the con may be, where it was a gaming con. Assuming that he's being honest and that was imagery from a con, then all you saw was white men. I think there was one non-white man there. That was it. So the idea that this hobby is being taken over by non-whites, women, is not true. Now, in my own personal experience here in California, I played in a group where I was like the only white guy, basically. There was another guy there for a little while who was white, and then there was another guy who claimed he was white, but I don't know. He didn't look white to me. So I'd say in my personal experience, yeah, there's been a shift into non-white, non-male players, but that's just one anecdotal piece of evidence. I played in another group here in California where there were mostly white guys in the group, so it's kind of, what are you going to get when you play these games? Or what are you going to get when you find a group?
If they can almost will it into being, and they reinforce it with the branding and the artwork associated with D&D, especially the new 2024 Players Handbook. Yet this all belies reality. There is a great video by the YouTuber RPG Elite, who is an African-American gamer. I'll link to it in the description of this video. In it, he details the 4 main reasons he believes that role-playing and D&D have never really caught on in the black community. Now, much of it would seem like common sense once you hear it. And let me say, I trust his take on this issue much more than I do the exclusively white, woke Seattle RPG mafia. Now, some of you may take exception to some of the reasons he gives, but what is indisputable is the conclusion. RPGs are something that have just not been embraced by the black community. I went to Gen Con this year for the first time as a YouTuber. I was keeping an unofficial tally of the minority representation there. At a convention of 80,000 people, I saw perhaps 20 to 25 black men. I saw maybe 4 or 5 black female attendees.
Yeah, so it's not a black, Hispanic, Asian-dominated activity. However, he is being dishonest about the number of attendees at the con. As you can see here, 2024 Gen Con, 71,000 people, not 80,000. You might be like, well, that's close enough. No, it's really, that's a big difference. That's more than a 10% difference from what he claimed. So that's significant, right? There's no need, I don't know why there's this dishonesty. We don't need to be dishonest about this. He saw, 25 black men at the con. That's still a tiny fraction. You don't have to go to 80,000. You can just say 70,000. That would be way more accurate. I'd rather hear him say 70,000 and be inaccurate than saying 80,000 and it's only 71,000. That's ridiculous. I don't know why this guy's coming from the point of view where he thinks he has to be hyperbolic in some way. Because believe me, I'm the anti-woke warrior. The last thing I want to do is shoot myself in the foot when it comes to pointing out the woke. I don't need to fudge the numbers. They're there already. We can be honest about this and still call out the woke garbage. It's really easy to do because there's so much of it.
That's it. I'm sure you can do the math, which leads to an infinitesimal small result. I'm also sure the leftists in the RPG community will make excuses for this, such as, they're too poor, or they're just not knowledgeable enough of these conventions, or it's not safe for them there. Lefties just love speaking for the black community like they're mentally deficient children. It's all nonsense, of course. The reason there's not a higher percentage of African Americans in the RPG hobby is that they are choosing to do other things of their own free will. There's no artificial barrier to entry. The hobby is, and always has been, welcoming to everyone. But it's also not the fault of those already in the hobby if people choose not to participate.
Right. I've never said, hey, you're black, you can't play in my game. Hey, you're Hispanic. Hey, you're Asian. You're Arabic. You're Native American. You're Inuit. You're Pacific Islander. I've never said that to anybody who's like, hey, you're a different race. I don't care. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what you look like. You want to game? Let's go game. If I don't like gaming with you, I'm going to find a different group or kick you out of mine. We've had to do that. My group was playing a game, Talislanta, with this guy. He introduced himself to our group and he joined us playing Talislanta and he fell in love with it because Talislanta is a great game. So he went out and he got the books and he wanted to run Talislanta. So he ran Talislanta for us and it was terrible. He was a terrible game master. It was awful. It was basically us watching him move his NPCs around the whole time. And it's like, that's not what I want to do in my game. I want to be interactive. So we eventually abandoned his campaign and didn't invite him to any other games with us or partake in any of his games. It was that simple. Guess what? He was a white guy.
The really insidious thing is that the Seattle RPG companies, as I exposed in an earlier video, are lily white. Almost zero black employees working on their RPGs in a significant...
So there you go. I mean, the whole industry is dominated by white people, especially white men. You see here, this image has got a high percentage of women in it for a gaming. If this were a gaming group, this would be a lot of women. I played in this one group here in California. I couldn't believe it. It was 8 people and 4 of them were women. I was like, what the heck is going on here? 50% rate of women? That's a lot. Normally, if you had a group this size, you might get 1 woman, maybe. That's not an exaggeration at all.
Role. Yet these hypocrites insist that the gaming world is changing. Their favorite whipping boy, the white male, is no longer a majority according to them. And again, I would just urge you to look at some of my Gen Con diary streams, where I walk the vendor hall, to easily refute this lie that they continue to propagate. White males make up still a large portion of the gaming world. Now, Wizards of the Coast essentially vandalized their own core rulebook to fit this square peg into a round hole. I went through the new 2024 Players Handbook and did a little experiment. I did a count of all the character-driven art pieces. In it, I counted the ones that featured us white dudes, as they derisively call us. And trust me, I was being very generous. Some of these guys weren't exactly dripping with the toxic masculinity.
That doesn't mean he's not white. Yes, this image right here is of a man who is not dripping with toxic masculinity. He looks rather much like a soy boy. Maybe he's homosexual. But he has a better beard than I do. I only call myself half soy boy. So just because somebody's not dripping with masculinity doesn't mean that they can't game as a white man. I don't understand where this hyperbole is coming from. This is so ridiculous. And what is character-driven artwork? Because that's what he said it was, the character-driven artwork. I'm like, okay, well, define that for me, please. I'm just looking at artwork with characters in it, with humanoids in it. Demi-humans, humanoids, whatever.
Masculinity that they accuse us all of having. But still, I counted them as part of team patriarchy. And on the other side, I counted the ones that featured white women, black men and black women, and all the various flavors of furry. The results? In the new Players Handbook, I counted just 17 pieces of art featuring white dudes as the subject. Guess how many in the other categories there were? Well over 100.
Okay, so why is it that white dudes have to be the subject for it to count? I don't understand why he's putting all these parameters on what counts as actual artwork involving white men in the game.
5 times as many. It is patently absurd. Why? To paraphrase the legendary Sherlock Holmes, what is the meaning of it? What object is served by this circle of misery and fear? It's not a coincidence. It's a deliberate act, of course.
When we got the descriptions, they were very adamant. They were like, try not to make it like a white blonde guy. Like, please, like, we love them, but there's like 500 million of them.
The diversity that the characters need to have needs to reflect the gaming world now. The mix of people that are playing these games, you know, it's not the, 13-year-old white boys held up in their basements. It's a very diverse crowd,
Why are they so ashamed of?
No, if you weren't able to look at the screen while these two people who work at WotC were talking, he had video of whatever con, probably Gen Con, playing, and it was like 99% white guys. So majority of the people who enjoy this hobby are white men. There's no doubt in my mind. But we don't need to over-exaggerate these numbers.
Of their core audience while simultaneously and hypocritically employing almost no real minorities in their companies. Is it because there aren't any minority employees to hire to begin with? If so, that presents quite the paradox for them, no? Minorities taking over an industry, yet them not being able to employ any in a position of real influence. Is it the white savior complex? Are smart, college-educated white liberals telling all those poor, unfortunate blacks that their self-selection of hobbies is wrong? I actually do believe that this is a large part of it. Up until the last couple years, I would have never thought even they could be so arrogant, but yes, I actually do now believe that. There's also a sense of self-loathing involved. Our education system and culture have twisted too many people into believing that they should be ashamed of their immutable characteristic of being born white. To the people who fall prey to this, I name you for the fools that you are. For those who willfully push this belief, and this would include Wizards of the Coast, Paizo, Green Ronin, and the rest of the woke RPG crowd, I wish nothing but the worst for you. I hope you drive more and more people away with this ridiculous, pandering, and uninspiring artwork. I hope more and more young Gen Z men who are getting tired of being demonized at birth for the sin of being born white and male, I hope they turn their backs on you. You deserve to be vilified for despising your core audience, to pursue one that simply does not exist. There's a place here in the hobby for everyone. Everyone that wants to embrace the game that Gary and Dave made. But when some people choose not to participate, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. Getting back to my opening parable, the NBA isn't making a public push to increase the number of white players in the NBA beyond the existing 17%, are they? White athletes may choose other sports or are simply not good enough to make it there. And that's okay. People understand this. It's not a cause for concern any more than the NHL being over 90% white.
Okay, I got to take a look down here. See, he outlines it right here. Read more, right here. In his comment section, he pinned a comment. It says, characters, not monsters or landscapes, art totals by category. Okay, so what constitutes a monster? Because the orcs used to be monsters, now they're not. So how are you counting this? But anyway, he counts 44 furries, which I don't know why he has a problem with furries, 37 Karens, 21 brothers and sisters, and 17 white dudes. All right. We are going to go through and count this. I don't know why, like I was saying, I don't know why he has a problem with furries, because D&D is a game of myth and magic. You're going to have non-humans in there, and that's great. I don't want to play a human when I play Dungeons & Dragons, or any other role-playing game for that matter. I don't want to play a human. I play a human every day of my freaking life. Let me have the fantasy of trying to play something else. It's so much better for me than it is to play a human, because I do that all the time. All right, so here we have on any flip the 2024 Players Handbook, and I don't know how we counted these. I don't know how we counted the various images, because I look here at this cover art and I see a non-human who looks like an African American woman, but she's non-human. She has pointed ears. She's an elf. This is not an elf that exists in Dungeons and Dragons. This is not a dark elf. Dark elves have pitch black skin, as we've talked about in previous videos. I see another woman who looks like an African American, or a black, I guess you should say black, because I mean she could be from any country, right? So she would count. And he's counting furries. I don't know why he's counting furries. That doesn't make sense to me. Now we have what appears to be a white woman over here, and what appears to be a dwarf, but this could be a white man. I don't know. And I don't know who is under the armor here. I don't know who we're seeing in the armor here. I'm going to go ahead and count this guy right here, this dwarf, as a white man, because I don't know what else to do. I am also going to count this image as having non-whites in it. And I don't know how he counted that. Did he count just this as just one image? And since it's dominated by non-white men, this counts against white men. I don't know how he counted it. He doesn't go into the detail on that. So we're going to have this for the white men. I'm going to keep a running tally down at the bottom of the screen for both non-white men and white men, or non-white, non-male, non-human, etc. Inside the book, we have a variant cover. I'm not going to count the variant cover just because it's, you know, this would be the cover if it weren't for the cover that we're using. And we just have, okay, so I accidentally turned to, my mouse is not working right. Hold on, bear with me. I'm going to use the keypad. Okay, so we have this Player's Handbook image here. We have to zoom in on it because I can't see. Okay, it looks like we have, I don't know if these are white people or not. You can't tell. This is definitely a female. Is she a human? Maybe. I can't tell. She might be an elf. Turn the page. We'll zoom out here. We got what appears to be a white man. What do you know? And what, is this a woman? I can't tell. Androgyny. I'm not sure if that's a woman or a man with long hair. I think it's a woman because I think those are breasts, but I can't tell for sure. That's 2 for the white men category though. I'm gonna count them. Here we go. Here's some more. Again, this looks like a dwarf, but I don't have enough context to tell whether or not this is a dwarf just by looking at this, so I'm gonna count it as a white man. That's 3 white men. There's also a white woman in here, or maybe that's an African woman. I can't tell. There's also a furry here, 2 furries, but again, we're focusing on the number of white men because he wants to say there's only 17 images featuring white men or focusing on white men. I don't know how he breaks this down. Okay, so here's another one with furries in it. Okay, here we go. We have white man right here. We have 2 white men, one here and one here. Are they the subject of this artwork? It looks like the subject of the artwork is an African American man or a black man. Okay, seriously, can we say that for sure? He's the subject, and this is apparently their fantasy happening up here on top. So I'm not going to count these 2 men here as a different set of images, but we're going to count this as one image for white men. Okay, that's four images for white men so far. 4. Here, this one here I have to zoom in on. Well, take a look here. That looks like it's a white man. I can't tell for sure. I don't happen to have this book. We'll count it as 5 for white men. Okay, we're being generous, right? 5 for white men. We're being generous. Here's another image featuring white man. This definitely has the white man as the subject compared to the other image featuring these same characters. So is that 6 for white men? 6 for white men? 6. Here's another image. No humans in it. It's furries only. Here's another image. No men in it, so we won't count that one. Here's another image with only furries. Here's an image with only women in it. Here's another image with white men, so that's 7 for white men. 7 white men. What do you know? And there's 3 men in that image. I don't know how you count them. Do you count all 3 of these men? They're all white men. And by the way, if you don't know, this is from the these characters come straight out of the original, the only Dungeons and Dragons animated series. Here, okay, there's a furry and a what appears to be an Asian woman, so non-male, so that doesn't count. All right. Okay, so we have a white man in the background here. This is a white human. Come on now. We don't see any other race in Dungeons and Dragons depicted like this, except for maybe a gnome or a dwarf, and he definitely doesn't have the proportions of a gnome or a dwarf. So it's going to be 8 for the white men. 9 for the white men. There you go. This looks like it's a halfling or a gnome or something, so I'm not going to count this girl here, but she doesn't count anyway because she's a girl. So here's another. I'm not sure if this is a man or if this is a woman. Looks like it's a man, but is it white or is he Asian? I can't tell. We'll call it 10 for the white men. 10 on white men. All right. Here's another one. This guy white. I can't really tell. 11 for white men. We'll call it 11 for white men. All right. This guy's an elf, I think, right? Can't tell. We'll call it 13 for white men. Here. No white men. Again, no white men here. Okay, here's another one. This looks like it's a dwarf. But I can't tell. Not enough context here. So 14 for white men. Right here, we have some characters. Looks like a man down here. 15 for white men. I think this is a woman, so I'm not going to count it. This is a mixed race individual, it looks like. No white men, look at that. Oh, wait, what's this here? Yeah, that's not, okay. Still not even humans here. Is this a white man? This is a white man, I think, right? 16 for white men. This might be 17 for white men. I can't tell if that's a woman or a man. We'll call it 17 for white men. $18 for white men. This could be 19 right here. This guy white. I can't tell. It could be the lighting. Maybe he's black. Already passed what he said was in the book. Said there were 17. Is this a white man or is it a gnome or a dwarf? So 19 for white men. Is this a white man or is it a gnome or a dwarf? Is this a white man? 21. Okay, those don't look like white men. Not white men. Not white men. Okay, so human. There's white man right here in this image. Maybe this is a white man back here. 22 for white men. Is this a white man or is it a mixed race man? Can't tell. I'm gonna go with mixed race in this case. Here's a white man, 23. He's not the subject. Oh, this is the subject. This is a white woman. We're gonna count it. 24 for white men. Can't see this one here. Let's see. 25 white men. Uh-oh, what's going on here? Oh, it's okay. So vampire. So we won't count this. All right. So there's vampires. All right. This looks like a white man. Is that a white man? Oh, it's a girl. Okay. There's one right here. White man. 26. 26 for white men. I might have lost track of count, but I mean the tally at the bottom should be accurate because I'm going to go through and make sure that's accurate. Here's another one. This doesn't look like it's a human. It could very well be a dwarf or a gnome. We'll call it 27. Here we go. 20. No, I don't see any white men here. Okay, so here's one over here. We'll call it 28. Here's two over here. Maybe 3. 29. Looks like a white man right here casting a spell. Same man we saw earlier. Same druid. This right here, is this a white man? I can't really tell. I'm going to go with it is a white man. 30. That's 31. That's not white man, is it? Is that a woman? It looks like a woman. Looks like a woman, but it could be a man. It could be 32. Here we go. Here's a druid. 33. This looks like there's a white man down here. That'd be 34. Looks like this is a white man. 35. Yep. Now, if you count the back cover here, I think this is the back cover, I don't know. We got 36. Okay, so my official count that I made before was 35. So I'm off a little bit from that. So I was off by 1 compared to my previous count on this. I'd say that's within margin of error. So 36 images that feature white men in them. Because again, he is so vague on how he doesn't give any rules for defining what he counts as the white male artwork. You see the numbers at the bottom. I have them all laid out here. This is the count, the final count. I went through and was more meticulous about counting these things after I made the video. So this is the official count. 35 white male humans, 45 non-white, non-male, or a combination thereof humans, and 89 furries. Now, ironically, even though this isn't 17 that he claimed it was, it's more than twice 17. This is about a 4-to-1 ratio, a little less. So he's right there. However, I'm going to go and say that he is 100% wrong, because why is he counting the furries as some sort of woke, progressive DEI initiative? Dungeons & Dragons is a game of myth and magic. The furries should not be counted in that, because they can be any color. You could have blue, green, red, pink, purple, or even brown and black skin on a character who is not human. And that just could be their nature in general. Why are you counting that as woke or DEI or progressive in any way? So some of the aliens from Star Wars, for example, are we going to look at, say, the blue guy who was playing the organ in Jabba's palace and be like, oh yeah, he's woke because he's not a white man? That's ridiculous. Are we going to look at some of the Jabba's guards who had brown skin, but were clearly alien, and say, oh well, that's woke because those are black people. Those are just stand-ins for black people or something. Let me explain something to you from I went through and I counted up in the 3.5 Players Handbook. A lot of people consider this to be the gold standard of the game. Guess what I found? There were 20 images featuring white men. 4 images featuring humans that were not white men. And 29 images that were featuring non-human characters, non-human individuals. Saying, okay, well, this is an image with a white woman in it, or an Asian woman, or a black man in it. So I counted it, even if it had a white man in it, I counted it, and then I would count it again. Okay? Just that seems to be the most accurate way of doing it. I don't know. But there's 29 images that feature non-humans, intelligent non-humans. So yeah, the game is going to feature a lot of that, because that's kind of what we want to do. When I play games, it seems like everybody wants to play a human, at least lately. In the past, everybody wanted to play like an elf, because elves were cool. Some people want to play dwarves because dwarves are cool. Some people want to play half-orcs because half-orcs are cool, and so on and so forth. But anyway, don't lie about this stuff. We can tear down the woke. We can point out the woke without being hyperbolic about it, without being dishonest about it. They are bad enough as it is without exaggerating our claims. The count that I get here, that's the count in the new Player's Handbook. Like it or lump it, that's it. It's not as filled with non-white humans, non-male humans as you think it is. I'm not saying that it's good, that this ratio is good the way that they have it, but it's not as bad as what they're claiming. Now, what I want to say is let D&D die. Stop playing Dungeons & Dragons. If you play Dungeons & Dragons, stop it. It is a terrible game. The setting, amazing. They have some really fun, great settings in D&D. Dark Sun is a freaking amazing setting. But you can play Dark Sun using the Dice 6 system, using the GURP system, using the Hero system. You should play Talislanta and Shadowrun. These games that I just mentioned to you right here, the 5 games I just mentioned, all of them 100 times better than the rules in Dungeons & Dragons. The rules in Dungeons & Dragons are crap. They are terrible. Don't play D&D. Talislanta is totally free, so is the Dice 6 system. You just got to find the PDF online. You can download the PDF of the Dice 6 system. Go to talislanta.com, and everything can be downloaded for free except for their newest edition, which isn't even out yet. It's all here at Talislanta for free. And you can just download any edition that you want right here and play the game. It's a fun game. Anyway, that's all I got for this time. Thank you for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next video.